The South rain fell heavy that night in California. Sundar Pichai sat alone at his long kitchen table, a cup of chai in his hands. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes when the kids are asleep and the emails have stopped for the day. He liked these rare moments when he could hear himself breathe. He looked at his phone screen, scrolling through a list of missed calls. None of them really mattered. Meetings, investors, reporters, the usual. He was about to set it down when a name popped up he hadn't seen in decades. Savita. At first he thought it must be a mistake, but no, under the name was an old Indian number with a faint photo attached. He leaned closer to look at it. The photo showed a woman in her 60s, her hair pulled back, her eyes kind but tired. His heart started to race. Savita. His nanny from when he was just a boy in Chennai, the woman who used to sit with him during storms, who told him stories. When his parents worked late, she'd disappeared from his life one day when he was a teenager, and no one really explained why. But now, after 30 years, she was calling. He stared at the screen until the call went to voicemail. He didn't pick up. He couldn't, but he couldn't put the phone down either. His hands shook a little as he replayed her message. Sundar, beta, it's me, Savita. I know it's been so long, but something has happened, and you are the only one I can call. Please call me back. I don't have much time. The message ended with a soft sob. He sat there in silence. The rain outside tapped against the windows like tiny fingers. What could she possibly want after all these years? Why did she sound so scared? He took a deep breath, then dialed the number back. The phone rang twice before she answered. Hello. Her voice was fragile like tissue paper. Savita, is it really you? There was a long pause, then a quiet laugh. You still sound like that shy boy who used to hide behind the door, she said. His lips curved into a small smile despite himself. You still sound like someone who never forgot me. How could I forget you? She said. But listen, I didn't just call to say hello. I am in trouble. His stomach tightened. What kind of trouble? But she didn't answer right away. He could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. Finally, she whispered, it's better if I don't say on the phone. Can you come? Come where? Back to India, to Chennai, to the old house, please. I'm sorry to ask, but you are the only one who can help me. He rubbed his forehead. He hadn't been to Chennai in years. His schedule was packed. Meetings, interviews, travel plans. But none of that seemed to matter now. Okay, he said softly, I'll come. He thought he heard her cry on the other end of the line. Thank you, beta, she said, thank you, but hurry. And then the line went dead. Sundar sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. The rain had stopped now, but the silence in the room felt heavier than ever. He got up, went to his bedroom, and started packing a bag. 24 hours later, he stood outside the old house in Chennai. The air was thick with heat and the smell of wet earth. Nothing had changed here. The same cracked walls, the same mango tree in the yard, the same rusty gate. But the house looked abandoned. He pushed the gate open and stepped inside. So he called. No answer. He climbed the steps to the front door and knocked. Still no answer. Then he heard a faint sound coming from the back of the house. He followed it, his shoes crunching on the gravel. The sound grew louder. It was someone crying. He turned the corner and froze. There she was, Savita, sitting on the ground, her back against the wall, clutching something in her hands. She looked much older than he remembered. Her hair was completely white now, her face lined with deep wrinkles, but her eyes were the same. Beta, she said, looking up at him. You came. He knelt beside her. What happened? Why are you sitting here? She opened her hands and showed him what she was holding. It was an old photograph, torn at the edges, faded from time. In the photo, a young boy, Sundar himself, sat on her lap, smiling. But there was another figure in the photo too, a man standing behind them, his face half hidden in shadow. Do you remember him? She asked in a trembling voice. Sundar squinted at the photo. Something about the man seemed familiar, but he couldn't place him. Who is he? Sundar asked. She swallowed hard. That is the reason I called you here. He looked at her, confused. She leaned closer and whispered, he's back. That night Sundar stayed in the house with her. He asked her to explain, but she kept shaking her head. Not yet, she said. Not here. Someone might hear us. He didn't sleep much. The walls of the house seemed to creak and groan all through the night. And once, just once, he thought he saw a shadow moving outside the window. But when he got up to check, there was nothing there. In the morning, he found Savita sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the photograph again. Savita, he said gently, you need to tell me what's going on. Who is that man? Why are you so afraid? She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. He was my brother, she said. Sundar frowned. Your brother? She nodded. But he was not a good man, she said. He used to hurt people. He hurt me too. And when you were little, he wanted to hurt you. Sundar felt a chill run through him. Me? Why? She closed her eyes. Because your father, he owed my brother money. A lot of money. And when he couldn't pay, my brother said he would take you instead. Sundar stared at her, his mind spinning. But nothing happened. He said, "I don't remember anything." She opened her eyes and looked at him with such sorrow it made his chest ache. "That's because I stopped him," she said. "I made sure he couldn't take you. I had something terrible to stop him, and then I ran away." Sundar swallowed hard. What did you do?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood up, went to the corner of the room, and pulled open a loose floorboard from underneath. She took out a small wooden box. "Everything you need to know," she said, handing him the box, "is in here." His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside were old letters, yellowed with age, a few more photographs, and a key. He looked at her, confused. "What is this key for?" he asked. She shook her head. "You'll see," she said, "but first, you need to go to the old train station, platform 3. Tonight, take the key with you, and be careful. He knows you're here." Sundar felt a heavy knot in his stomach. "Who knows?" he asked. She looked at him, her eyes dark with fear. "My brother," she whispered. "He's waiting for you." Later that day, Sundar walked through the crowded streets of Chennai, the wooden box tucked under his arm. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. Every time he turned a corner, he thought he caught sight of a shadow slipping out of view. He tried to call Savita, but her phone was off. He even went back to the house, but she was gone. All she had left him was the box, the key, and the name of the station. By the time he reached the train station, the sun was setting. The platforms were busy, filled with people coming and going, the air thick with noise and heat. He made his way to platform 3, clutching the key in his pocket. But when he arrived, the platform was empty. Completely empty. He stood there, confused, looking around. Then, from the shadows at the far end of the platform, a figure stepped forward. A tall man in a dark coat, his face hidden in the dim light. "You've grown," the man said, his voice low and cold. Sundar froze. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man laughed softly. "You already know," he said, "and you have something that belongs to me." He reached out a hand. "Give me the key," he said. Sundar's mind raced. Every instinct told him not to. "Why?" he asked. The man's eyes flashed. "Because," he said, "if you don't, someone you care about will pay the price." And then he held up a phone. On the screen was a photo of Savita, tied to a chair, her mouth gagged, her eyes wide with terror. "You have until midnight," the man said. "Bring me the key, or she dies." Then he turned and walked into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Sundar stood there, heart pounding, clutching the keys so tight it dug into his palm. He looked down at the wooden box in his other hand, and for the first time, he noticed something written on the bottom of the box, scratched into the wood in shaky letters. It read, "Don't trust him. The key doesn't open what he thinks." His breath caught in his throat. What did that mean? What was he supposed to do now? Behind him, the train whistle blew, and the lights of the platform flickered, and somewhere in the distance, he thought he heard Savita's voice, calling his name, but when he turned to look, the platform was still empty. The platform at platform lights buzzed faintly above Sundar's head, casting a pale yellow glow on the cracked concrete beneath his feet. The smell of metal and dust mixed with the distant scent of chai from a closed stall, though no one was around to brew it now. He stood in the middle of platform 3, clutching the wooden box to his chest and feeling the weight of the small iron key pressing hard against his palm. The words etched into the bottom of the box, "Don't trust him. The key doesn't open what he thinks," echoed over and over in his mind, as if they themselves had a voice. His breathing felt louder. Here, in the silence, every exhale seemed to bounce back off the stone walls that framed the platform. Every small movement he made, his shoes scraping, his shirt sleeve brushing his side, sounded like a shout. And still, he could feel it. That heavy presence, lurking somewhere nearby. The man from earlier, Savita's brother, was out there in the darkness, waiting, watching. He took a few slow steps toward the far end of the platform where the man had stood before vanishing. The shadows there felt alive somehow, shifting shapes that never fully resolved, whispering things his ears couldn't quite make out. His eyes darted back and forth, scanning the corners, but there was no sign of him. The only sound was the occasional groan of old metal as a train far away rolled over its tracks. He stopped at a rusty bench and sat down heavily, his legs feeling weaker than he expected. The box rested on his lap, and he traced the words on its underside with his thumb. The letters felt rough against his skin. Don't trust him, but why not? Hadn't she herself said he was dangerous? Hadn't she said he was back? And then, beneath the fear and confusion, another thought crept in, a quiet, unsettling suspicion. If she hadn't trusted him enough to tell him everything outright, could he trust her? Why hadn't she just explained? Why leave him standing here with riddles and threats? He shook his head to clear it. No, Savita had always protected him. She had risked everything to keep him safe as a boy. She would never betray him now. The danger was real, and he could feel it in his bones. He pulled the key from his pocket and held it up to the light. It was heavier than it looked, blackened with age, with a strange spiral carved into its bow. The teeth were jagged, irregular, almost like they'd been filed down by hand. It didn't look like any key he had ever seen, but it carried a quiet menace, as though it could open something that should never be opened. He was still staring at it when he heard footsteps. They were soft at first, so soft he wondered if he imagined them. But then they grew louder, deliberate, coming closer and closer. He froze, every muscle tight, and quickly slipped the key back into his pocket. From the far end of the platform, the man in the dark coat emerged again. His walk was slow, almost casual, though his eyes gleamed like sharpened glass beneath the brim of his hat. "You kept me waiting, boy," the man said, his voice low and cutting through the thick air. Sundar stood, squaring his shoulders. "You gave me until midnight," he replied, though his voice was not as steady as he wanted it to be. The man chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound. "And yet, here you are already. I see you've learned the value of urgency." Good. He stopped a few feet away, just beyond arm's reach. He smelled faintly of tobacco and something metallic, something like iron or blood. "Do you have the key?" the man asked, tilting his head. Sundar hesitated. His fingers brushed over the words carved into the box. "Don't trust him. Before I give you anything," Sundar said carefully, "I want to know what it unlocks, and why you want it." The man's jaw tightened, and his eyes narrowed slightly. But then he smiled, a smile that never reached his eyes. "You think you're in a position to bargain?" he said softly. "Did you forget what's at stake? Should I remind you?" He raised his hand, and suddenly his phone screen glowed in the dim light. The image of Savita appeared again, still tied to the chair, still gagged, her eyes glistening with terror, only now, her head was hanging lower, her body slumped. Sundar's chest clenched painfully. "You see," the man said, almost gently, "she doesn't have much time. If you want her to keep breathing, you will give me the key." Now Sundar swallowed hard, his mind racing, his instinct screamed at him to hand it over, to save her, but the box's warning sat heavy in his heart. "Don't trust him. What happens to her if I do?" Sundar asked quietly. The man raised an eyebrow. "She lives, you have my word." But there was something in his tone, something too smooth, too easy, that sent a shiver down Sundar's spine. "And if I don't?" Sundar pressed. The man's smile vanished. "Then her life ends tonight," he said flatly, "and you will have to live with that on your conscience, forever." The silence that followed felt unbearable. Sundar could hear the faint hum of electricity in the wires above and the whisper of wind sweeping across the tracks. He reached into his pocket and felt the key's cold metal against his fingers. Then he took a slow breath and let his hand drop back to his side. "Not yet," he said. The man's eyes flashed with something sharp, anger maybe, or amusement. "You're making a mistake," the man hissed. "Maybe," Sundar said softly, "but so are you." For the first time, the man's smile faltered. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back into the shadows, his coat billowing behind him. Once he was gone, Sundar sat back down on the bench, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. He opened the wooden box again and pulled out the letters, scanning them desperately for any clue, any instruction, anything to help him understand what he was supposed to do. One letter, written in Savita's handwriting, caught his eye. It was dated nearly 30 years ago, just days after she had left his family without explanation. "Dear Beta," it began, "if you are reading this, then you have found the key. It means he has returned, just as I always feared he would. Please listen carefully to what I say now, for your life and mine both depend on it." Sundar's hands trembled as he continued to read. "The key does not open a door. Not in the way you are thinking. It opens a box, a different box, hidden deep below the old mango tree in our yard. Everything you need to defeat him is inside that box, but beware, if he gets it before you do, all will be lost. He will not hesitate to hurt you, to hurt anyone, to get what he wants. Trust no one but yourself. Hurry, dig at the base of the tree. You will understand when you see it." His breath came fast and shallow now. The mango tree, the old house. The answer had been there all along. He stood quickly, shoving the letters and the key back into his pocket, but before he could take a single step toward the exit, he felt it. Again, that presence. He froze. A shadow fell across the platform. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed behind him. He didn't dare turn around, but a voice, not the man's this time, spoke, quiet and low. "You shouldn't have come back here, boy," the voice said. It was a woman's voice, cold and sharp as broken glass. "He's not your only enemy," she continued, "and now, you've brought us both what we need." He spun around, but no one was there, only the shadows twisting at the far end of the platform. A sudden gust of wind blew through the station, knocking the box from his hands. It hit the ground with a hollow thud, the lid flying open and scattering the letters across the concrete. He scrambled to grab them, but as he did, he caught sight of something strange. On the underside of one of the letters was a faint map, a series of lines and symbols that led directly to the mango tree, but there was also another mark. Another destination circled just beyond it, and scrawled next to it, in the same shaky handwriting, "If you find this second place, do not go alone." His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the map, but before he could make sense of it, The station lights above flickered violently and went out, plunging the platform into darkness. He was left standing there, clutching the map, with nothing but the sound of soft, measured footsteps approaching from the shadows. And then a whisper, so close, it tickled his ear. You chose wrong, Sundar. And now, it's too late. Asterisk under the mango tree darkness was so complete it felt alive, pressing against Sundar's skin, crawling into his lungs. He stood frozen on the empty platform, the faint map clutched tightly in one hand, the wooden box in the other. His heart pounded so hard it seemed to echo in the silence. The whisper he had just heard still lingered in the air, cold and sharp. You chose wrong, Sundar. And now, it's too late. His eyes strained, searching the shadows for the source of the voice. The footsteps had stopped, but the weight of that presence remained. It was impossible to tell where it was coming from, or if it had ever been real at all. Sweat trickled down his temple, cutting through the layer of dust that already clung to his skin. He knew he couldn't stay there. He forced himself to take one step, then another, until he found the stairs and climbed back up to the station's exit. The street outside was nearly empty, though the air was thick with humidity and the faint smell of burning wood. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, and a child's laugh floated faintly on the wind. But here, where he stood, everything felt abandoned, as though the city itself were holding its breath. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. It was past midnight now, yet his mind felt wide awake, sharpened by fear and confusion. The map burned in his hand, its lines and symbols etched into his memory already. His fingers traced the path again and again. It was clear what he had to do. He needed to get back to the house, to the mango tree, before anyone else could. But the warning scribbled next to the second location, do not go alone, gnawed at him. Why? Who else could he trust? Who could he even call at this hour? His feet carried him forward, down the narrow streets of Chennai, toward the house where it all began. Each step felt heavier than the last dot. When he reached the house, it was even quieter than before. The gate creaked loudly as he pushed it open, and the smell of damp earth and old stone filled his nose. The mango tree loomed ahead, its branches sprawling wide like a great black canopy under the moonlight. He stopped at the base of the tree and stared at the ground, trying to steady his breathing. The soil was cracked and dry in places, but softer under the tree's shade, easier to dig. He dropped to his knees and began clawing at the dirt with his bare hands at first. Then with an old trowel he found leaning against the wall. The earth gave way slowly, releasing a deep, musky scent as he dug deeper and deeper. His fingers ached, his nails split, and sweat ran freely down his face. But he didn't stop. He could feel it, something was buried here. He just had to keep going. And then, after what felt like an eternity, his fingers struck wood. He froze, wiping the sweat from his brow. He cleared away more dirt until he uncovered a small, dark box, much older and heavier than the one Savita had left him. It was bound with rusted metal bands and sealed with a keyhole shaped exactly like the jagged key he carried. His pulse quickened as he pulled the key from his pocket. It fit perfectly, but just as he was about to turn it, a voice cut through the night. Don't. He spun around, heart leaping into his throat. There, standing just beyond the tree's shadow, was Savita. She looked older than she had even the day before, as though years had passed in hours. Her eyes glimmered with something he couldn't quite name. Sadness, maybe, or fear. Savita, he whispered. You're alive. She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the earth. Yes, Beta, she said quietly, but not because of him. Not because of what you've done tonight. He stood up slowly, confusion and relief warring inside him. But he showed me a photo, Sundar said, his voice shaking. You were tied up. You were. A photo is only a photo. She interrupted, her tone sharp now. It can lie, and so can he. Everything he's told you is a lie. He shook his head, trying to make sense of it. Then what is this? He asked, gesturing to the box half buried in the earth. What does he want? She looked down at it, her face pale. That, she said softly, is what he's been searching for all these years. And it's the only thing that can destroy him. But if he gets it first, he won't just hurt me. He'll hurt everyone, and there will be no stopping him. Sundar's breath came faster. Then we have to open it. We have to know, she snapped, stepping closer and grabbing his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Not yet. Not here. Once you open it, you can't undo it. The choice you make tonight will follow you forever. He stared at her, the weight of her words sinking deep into his chest. Then tell me what to do, he pleaded. Please, I don't understand any of this. Her eyes softened, and she let go of his wrist. Take it, she said finally, but don't open it here. Go to the second place on the map, and take someone with you. Anyone. You trust who? He asked, his voice breaking. I don't even know who I can trust anymore. She placed her hand gently on his cheek. You'll know, she whispered. Just, hurry. He's closer than you think. He wrapped the ancient box in his jacket, tucking it under his arm. The map burned in his pocket. His body felt heavy, but his mind buzzed with questions he couldn't yet answer. He made it back to the street and began walking toward town. toward the second location on the map. But as he passed under a streetlight, something made him stop. His reflection in a nearby shop window caught his eye, but it wasn't his reflection. The man from the platform was standing there instead, grinning. And in the reflection, Sundar saw that he was holding the ancient box too, only in the reflection, it was open. Inside the box was something glowing faintly, something that pulsed like a living heart. Sundar stumbled back, heart hammering in his chest. When he looked again, the reflection was normal, just himself, pale and wide-eyed, clutching the sealed box. But the whisper returned, curling around him like smoke. "You can't stop what's coming," it murmured. "You were never meant to." He spun around, but the street was empty. And then his phone buzzed in his pocket. His hands shook as he pulled it out. There was a single new message. No name, no number, just words. "Open it now or she dies. This is your final chance." Below the message was a video clip. He pressed play. The screen showed Savita again, but this time, she was kneeling on the floor, her face bloody, her hands tied. She looked straight into the camera and whispered one word before the clip cut to black. "Run." The video stopped, and the street lights above him blinked out one by one, plunging him into darkness again. And from somewhere behind him, closer now than ever, he heard a laugh. Not a loud laugh, but soft, cruel, knowing. The second Placieth. Laugh behind him was not loud, yet it sliced through the silence of the empty street like a blade. Sundar froze, the sound lodging itself in his chest. It was close, too close, but when he turned around, the street behind him was just as empty as before. The faint smell of burning still lingered, mingling with the metallic tang of fear that now rose in his throat. He gripped the box tighter under his arm and forced his legs to move. Each step felt heavier, as though the darkness itself had grown thick enough to wade through. He didn't dare look back again. His mind clung to the map in his pocket, to the second place circled in Savita's handwriting, to her desperate warning, "Do not go alone." But he was alone, and the realization of it pressed on him with every passing second. He reached the edge of town just before dawn. The sky had begun to lighten faintly, but the air remained heavy and damp, with mist coiling low over the ground. The streets here were narrower, older, lined with crumbling stone walls and tangled wires that hung like spiderwebs. Stray dogs watched him silently from the shadows as he passed, their eyes reflecting the faint glow of the street lamps. But the second place on the map was marked deep in this part of the city, beyond a row of shuttered shops and down an alley that seemed to lead nowhere. Sundar followed the map step by step, glancing around at every sound, feeling his pulse in his ears. The alley opened into a small courtyard. In the center of it stood an ancient well, its stones slick with moss, its mouth covered by a wooden lattice that looked as if it had not been touched in decades. Carved into the stones around the base of the well were faint symbols, some familiar from the map, others strange and unsettling. He stopped at the edge of the courtyard and stared. This was the place. But now that he was here, he understood why Savita had told him not to come alone. The air here felt wrong, heavier, colder, as though the well itself were breathing. Shadows clung to the corners even as the sky above began to brighten. He pulled out the key, feeling its cold weight in his hand, and crouched beside the well. There was no lock visible, but the map had led him here, so there had to be something. He reached for the wooden lattice covering the well. But before his fingers could touch it, a voice spoke from behind him. "You're making a mistake." He spun around, heart hammering. A woman stood there, but it wasn't Savita. This woman was younger, though her dark eyes carried the same kind of sadness Sundar had seen in Savita's. Her hair was pulled back tightly, and she wore a simple sari that clung to her in the damp air. She stood perfectly still, watching him. "Who are you?" Sundar asked, his voice rough from fear and exhaustion. She didn't answer at first. She stepped closer instead, her bare feet silent on the stones. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "I am the one she should have called," she said, "but she called you instead, and now you've brought it here." Sundar felt the weight of the box in his arms and took an involuntary step back. "What are you talking about? What is this?" She looked at the box, her expression darkening. "It's not a box," she said softly. "Not really. It's a prison." He stared at her confused. "A prison for what?" But she only shook her head. "You don't want to know." She knelt beside the well and ran her fingers lightly over the carved symbols. Her touch lingered on one of them, a jagged spiral, the same shape that had been carved into the key's handle. "This is the last place he can't reach," she murmured. "As long as it stays sealed." Then she looked up at Sundar, her eyes sharp now, cutting through him like glass. "But if you open it here," she continued, "if you give him what he wants, he will take everything. Not just her. Not just you, everyone." Sundar's breath came fast and shallow. His hands trembled. "Then what do I do?" he asked. "She's in danger," he said. "He said if I don't give it to him, she dies." The woman's eyes softened, but only slightly. "And you believe him?" she asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Sundar closed his eyes for a moment. The image of Savita, tied to the chair, flashed in his mind. Her whisper, "Run," echoed in his ears. When he opened his eyes again, he shook his head. "No," he said, "I don't." The woman's lips curved into the faintest hint of approval. "Good," she said. "Then we still have a chance." Together, they pried the lattice off the well, revealing the dark mouth below. The air that rose from it was icy, carrying the faint scent of wet stone and something older. Something unnameable. She gestured to the spiral carved into the stone. "Put the key here," she instructed. Sundar hesitated, but did as she said. The key fit perfectly into the groove. When he turned it, a faint click sounded beneath the stones, and a small compartment at the base of the well opened. Inside lay a hollow space, and in it, a bundle of cloth wrapped around something heavy. He reached in and lifted it out. The cloth fell away to reveal a second box, but this one was different. Not wooden like the first, but made of some dark metal that seemed to drink in the light. It felt colder than ice in his hands, and faint, strange patterns shimmered just beneath its surface. Patterns that moved as he watched them. The woman's eyes never left it. "That," she said softly, "is the real prison, the one you must never open." Before he could reply, a sound shattered the silence, a loud cracking noise from the alley behind them. Sundar turned sharply, just in time to see the man in the dark coat step into the courtyard. His smile was wide and hungry, his eyes glinting with triumph. "There you are," the man said, his voice curling like smoke through the cold air. The woman stepped between Sundar and the man, her stance firm. "You can't have it," she said flatly. The man laughed, a low, cruel laugh that made Sundar's skin crawl. "Oh, but I already do," he said. "He brought it here himself. Didn't you, boy?" He took a step closer, and the air seemed to darken with him. "Give it to me," he ordered, his voice a whip crack now, "or she dies screaming." He raised his phone and tapped the screen. On the screen was Savita again, her face bruised, her breath shallow. But this time she wasn't tied up anymore. She was kneeling in a circle of chalk, her hands pressed together as if in prayer. The man's smile widened. "You see," he whispered, "she already knows. She's been waiting for this." The woman beside Sundar turned slightly, her face pale. "If he opens it," she murmured to him, "we won't be able to stop it." But Sundar felt rooted to the spot, torn between the two of them, between what he saw and what he knew. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice cracking. The woman's gaze met his, steady and unflinching. "Trust yourself," she said. "Not him, not even me. Just trust yourself." The man's laugh grew louder now, echoing off the stones, filling the courtyard. "You have no choice," he roared. "Give it to me. Open it." The box in Sundar's hands seemed to grow heavier, colder. Its strange patterns began to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. His fingers tightened around it, and then he made his choice. He took a deep breath, lifted the box high above his head, and hurled it into the darkness of the well. The instant it struck the bottom, the earth beneath them shuddered violently. The air split with a deafening sound, not quite thunder, not quite a scream, and a rush of icy wind surged up from the well, knocking all three of them to the ground. When Sundar scrambled back to his feet, the courtyard was no longer quiet. Whispers rose from the depths of the well, hundreds of them, all at once, weaving together into something both beautiful and horrifying. The man in the dark coat staggered to the edge of the well, his face twisted in rage. "What have you done?" he hissed. The woman stood slowly, her eyes fixed on the swirling darkness below. "He chose," she said simply. But as she spoke, Sundar saw something in the well, a faint light rising from its depths, a shape, human, but not quite, reaching upward, and somewhere deep in the shadows. Savita's voice called out to him, but this time, it didn't sound like a plea, it sounded like a warning. "You let it out," she whispered, "you let it out." What rises from the wealth air above the well was no longer still. Sundar felt it immediately, a shift, as though the very ground beneath his feet had become something alive and restless. The whispers, rising from the depths, grew louder, overlapping, voices old and young, male and female, speaking in words he couldn't understand, but somehow felt in his bones. They filled the courtyard like a storm about to break, pressing against his skin, and making his ears ring. The faint light from the well pulsed brighter, and for the first time, Sundar could make out what was rising from it. It was a shape that almost looked human, tall, thin, its body made of shadows but outlined by that eerie, shifting glow. Its head turned as it climbed higher, and though its face was nothing more than darkness, Sundar felt its gaze lock on him. His breath caught. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. The woman beside him stood straighter now, her eyes fixed on the figure. Though her expression was calm, Sundar could see her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "You shouldn't have thrown it," the man in the dark coat hissed from the other side of the courtyard. His voice was different now, not the cold, commanding tone from before, but something brittle, panicked. "You've doomed yourself. You've doomed all of us." Sundar turned on him, fury and fear finally boiling over. "You lied to me. From the start," he said, his voice cracking. "You said she'd die if I didn't give you the box. But she told me to run. She knew you would say that, So tell me now, what is this? What did I just set free? The man didn't answer. Instead, he stumbled back a step, his eyes still fixed on the figure as it reached the lip of the well. You can't stop it now, he whispered. The woman moved closer to Sundar, her voice low but urgent. Listen to me, she said. That thing, it isn't your enemy. Not yet. It's what he's been trying to control all these years. What he's been keeping in that prison. But it doesn't belong to him. And now, it's angry. The figure climbed out of the well fully now. Standing tall in the middle of the courtyard, it stretched impossibly long fingers toward the sky, and the stones beneath its feet cracked and blackened wherever it stepped. The whispers became louder, filling every corner of Sundar's mind, and with them came flashes of images, moments he couldn't possibly have lived but somehow remembered. A door slamming in the night, a hand reaching for his Savita's face, younger, twisted with fear. Then a final whisper, louder than the rest. In a language he somehow understood. Find her. His eyes snapped to the phone, still clutched in the man's hand. Savita's image still glowed on the screen. But now, her eyes were open wide, her lips forming silent words. Find me. Without thinking, Sundar lunged forward and tore the phone from the man's hand. The man let out a cry of rage and tried to grab him, but the woman stepped between them, pushing the man back hard enough that he stumbled and fell. Go, she shouted to Sundar. Find her before it does. But before Sundar could move, the shadow figure shifted. It turned toward him, and though it had no face, he felt its attention fall entirely on him. It began to walk. Every step it took made the courtyard colder, the ground beneath it cracking deeper. Sundar backed away, clutching the phone and the map in his hands, his breath coming fast. The woman called out again, her voice fierce now. Go, Sundar, you can still save her, but only if you reach her before it does. He ran down the streets, blurred past him, the phone screen glowing faintly in his palm. The map in his pocket burned against his leg, as though urging him on. Behind him, he could hear the cracking of stone, the low hiss of the shadow as it followed. He didn't know how far he ran, only that the city seemed to grow darker and quieter. The deeper he went, as though the sun itself had decided not to rise today. He turned corner after corner, following the faint signal on the phone's map app, until he came to the edge of an old railway yard. Rusted tracks stretched out in all directions, overgrown with weeds. A few abandoned carriages lay scattered, their windows broken, their doors hanging open like gaping mouths. At the very center of it all was a single shed, its door ajar, faint light flickering inside. He approached slowly, every instinct telling him that something waited for him in there. Inside the shed, Savita sat on the floor, still within the faint chalk circle he'd seen in the video. Her head was bowed, her hands resting on her knees. But she looked up when she heard him enter. Her eyes met his, and he froze. She looked different. Her face was thinner, her eyes darker, her expression both familiar and strange at once. Beta, she whispered. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the cold air like a bell. He rushed to her side and dropped to his knees. Savita, he said, his voice breaking. I found you. I'm here. But she raised a hand, silencing him. You shouldn't have opened it, she said quietly. He stared at her, confused. You told me to run. You told me not to trust him. I thought. Her lips curved into a faint, bitter smile. I said to run, she repeated, but not from him. From me. He blinked, the words sinking in slowly. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She looked down at the chalk circle around her, then back up at him. I put myself here, she said, to keep it inside me. For 30 years, I carried it. I kept it locked away because no one else could. And then you let it out. His stomach turned to ice. He breathed. You were the prison. She nodded once, her expression weary. And now it's free, she murmured. He stumbled back, his hands shaking. Outside the shed, he could hear the faint crack of stone. The shadow was close now, closer than ever. Then tell me what to do, he said, his voice cracking. Please tell me how to stop it. She looked at him, and for the first time, her eyes glistened with tears. You can't stop it anymore, she said softly, but you can choose where it goes next. You can take it back into the box, or you can take it into yourself. His breath caught. If you take it, she continued, you'll have to carry it forever. You'll never be free of it, but everyone else will be safe. He shook his head, the weight of her words crashing down on him. I can't, he whispered. You can, she said. You are stronger than you think. He stared at her, the air in the shed growing colder and heavier with each passing second. The shadow was at the door now, its faint glow lighting up the cracks in the wood, its whispers filling his mind. Savita reached for his hand and pressed something cold and heavy into his palm. He looked down. It was the jagged key. Choose, she said. And then the door burst open. The shadow figure filled the doorway, its long fingers stretching toward him, its voice like 1,000 whispers in his ears. Choose.